All right. Hey, folks. This is Drew Burdick with the Building Great Experiences podcast. With me, I have Matt Coffey, a friend and longtime colleague. We worked together, 15 years ago, I think it was. We actually launched an agency many moons ago, and it was a great time. But, anyways, we're here today to talk about the intersection of marketing and customer experience. Matt and I had coffee catching up recently. We're talking a little bit about that and just really kind of cool discussion points. So, anyways, I'll let Matt introduce himself here in a second. We'll get into it.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. Excited to be here and chat with you. Matt Coffey, I am the marketing director for a home service brand called USA Insulation. We're part of a platform company, which is really common in home service franchising, but the platform company is called Threshold Brands. And under that, we have 11 different service brands that all are kind of cohesive and synergistic, but I mainly focus as marketing director for an insulation company that's all over the US. So previously from that, I was actually on the platform side with a company called Mainline Brands that owned and operated home service brands as well. Kind of been in franchising ever since, like you mentioned, starting out in agency world. Really love the franchising world. It's very much like agency because you kind of sit with small business owners when you think about franchising, but not a lot of people know franchising. They know it, they just don't know kind of what it means. But it's interesting. Once you're in it, you don't really get out of it. So that's where I'm at today. Don't see myself leaving.
Cool. So, got a couple of questions. First question we're going to dig into today is just defining like where we think the intersection of marketing and customer experience is.
Yeah, I think it's really apparent in the franchising space because you have a big corporation or a big company that has a lot of little smaller business units, mainly throughout the whole country, that all have to work and act the same. So if you think about the customer experience, especially from where I sit, the head of marketing, that's really my job, is to make sure that one, our brand name, image across our whole platform is the same, right? Which is creating consistency for that customer. So it starts there. One, consistency across all platforms, right? Whether that be marketing channels or operational in the field, somebody actually, doing the work, a technician in our case. And then on the other side, the customer service. So you call into an office or you show up to a brick and mortar, and that person that's actually talking to you there, they actually set the tone for a lot that happens in the business world, because we always say that person that answers your phone or that person that someone talks to when they come in the door is the most important person, because that really is what sets that expectation for the experience for the customer with your brand.
Love it. Yeah, I think it's interesting when you think about the franchise model. I've kind of previously spoken about this idea where there's like different altitudes of customer experience, right? There's lowest levels product, service, brand, and ecosystem. And franchise kind of sits in the world of like ecosystem and brands, right? Because you have all these different franchisees that are part of the same brands, but they kind of operate independently. They're doing their own thing, and it's a unique challenge to try and get folks to communicate in the same way, to provide the same level of service, to provide the same quality product, so that the customer, no matter if they're in Dallas, Texas, New York, California, Charlotte, they're getting, a consistent experience, and they're not saying, well, how come I had such a great, burger in California and now I'm eating one in Charlotte and it tastes like crap.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's right on.
Yeah, the easiest way in the way that I explain it is because when most people think of franchising, they do think exactly kind of where your head went, as they think fast food, right? So if you think of like one of the brands that's held to the highest level of that customer experience is Chick-fil-A, right? So you know that when you go there, it doesn't matter where across the country, you're going to get it's my pleasure, you're going to get the happy, cheerful experience with the people serving you the food, with the people taking your order, and your experience with the actual service or the product, in this case, the chicken, is going to be the same. And to your point, it's going to taste the same. And I think that's where I sit in that ecosystem, is making sure that the Chick-fil-A in Dallas, Texas, isn't the owner is not going off and saying, hey, our people like some pizza. So we're going to add pizza to our offering, right? Or our people like, if we wear purple uniforms. So if you think of it just at the most basic level, it's to your point, you have to make the customer experience the same across all platforms and across all businesses in the franchise model. So that way you create this kind of flywheel effect of, where your customer, you're able to retain them, but then you're also able to get the word of mouth marketing, which is truly how these small businesses grow.
Yeah. I think there's something in the franchise piece that's also fascinating, which is I worked with a company that's like automotive care. They're like essentially a portfolio of brands, and they have franchises within those brands. And what's really interesting is you've got the parts of the customer experience that the franchisee kind of is responsible for, but then you have that almost like shared service that's across all of the brands or all of the franchisees. And they might be the ones that are managing the website. They might be the ones that are, managing the app. They might be, producing commercials for the entire business. At the local level, they're more focused on direct mail, printed collateral in their physical space.
Grassroots, right? The ground game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's someone like yourself, you have to think horizontally and then vertically, right? You're thinking about, how do I make it a cohesive experience across every touch point with a customer, regardless of if they're interacting with us on our website or our app or on the ground in a physical space, physical retail space. You have to kind of like think about all those things, which is, I think it's a unique challenge, and it is omni-channel. You can't just say, oh yeah, we've got, the app and the website are good and they all feel cohesive. But then in the stores, people, to your point, people are showing up with purple shirts on in one store and orange shirts in another. And you're like, okay, now the customer's confused, right? And it affects their experience.
It is interesting. In a previous role, I worked for a platform company that specialized in mental health and wellness, right? It was, the biggest brand was like boutique fitness. And I remember the CEO saying, if I walk into gym and I see the person at the front desk is wearing a polo and slacks, I'm like, where am I? Right? Because I'm not buying a car. Like, I'm walking into a gym. I want to see them in, joggers or athletic gear. Like, they need to look and feel the brand. So that way, that customer experience, especially in a gym where there's so much competition, that customer experience starts right when they walk in the door. Right. And the way that we're different, especially in the current brand that I'm with, Home Services, is different from like a fast food. Is if you go to a fast food restaurant, you're going there for one reason, right? I don't have to teach you how to sell a burger to a different demo. I don't have to build marketing that's going to speak to a different demo. Depending on, kind of where you live geographically, the marketing pieces may change a little bit to fit that demo that lives there. But if you think about who I'm responsible for selling for and marketing to, like, the way that a customer engages with us is going to be completely different based on who they are, where they live, how old are they, how much money do they have, so those are all things that you have to take into account. So I can support our sales team to say, hey, if you go in to sell a 60-year-old, here are the objections they're going to have. Here's the promotions you should be running. Like, here's all of that stuff. So selling from one person to another person is so different when it comes to that user experience, especially in today's world where there's so much noise. People want such a tailored experience, and that's how you're going to grow and beat the competition, is building those personas and then tailoring an experience to them.
Yeah, it's dead on. Many businesses, I think, often just sort of bucket customer into just one bucket customer, right? And it's, hey, all right, our customers, they make a bunch of assumptions like, oh, they like this, they live here, they do these things, whatever. And it often is not true, or it alienates a big population of their, target customer. And so it's really important today to personalize and tailor those experiences and really understand, like, what do they need and want. So if you're doing it right, you're building out personas for all the different types of customers that you could sell to, which, for example, in your business, it might be, hey, we have these customers here and they have these different needs and wants versus these customers over here that this other franchisee is serving. And we've got to accommodate both of those things. And we have different strategy for our marketing messages and our brand here versus there, or with this type of customer versus that customer. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of jobs to be done. It's a really great framework, but it's basically this idea that sometimes we over-index on the demographic data and we forget what like ultimately customers are trying to accomplish. So, for example, I use this example a lot. Packaging companies, right? Like a manufacturer that makes packaging. People typically think like, oh, the customer, what they're trying to do is trying to pack their stuff, and that's what they're trying to do. No, what they're trying to do is get their product to their customer, right? So that's the job to be done. It's not I'm trying to pack my stuff. It's I'm trying to get my stuff to my customers. And so it's a slight reframing, but it starts to reorient your marketing messages, how you sell, how you position yourself so that the customer is able to clearly understand like, oh, you're going to help me get my stuff to my customer faster. Great. Like I want to work with you, and like showing them how you're going to do that versus it being like tailored only to their, hey, you live in this geography and you're this age and you have this, income level or whatever.
It
So
makes it
anyway,
more personal.
yeah, exactly.
And we deal with that every day because most people, like, there's a level of education that's needed when you're going to buy insulation. Like, nobody is going to buy really insulation unless they know what insulation is, right? I think when we're trying to sell and when we're trying to build marketing pieces, we're trying to sell one, something that you don't see, and we're trying to sell something that you don't even know that you need. So if it's summertime and your AC's on, but your two rooms in the front upstairs are hot, well, your initial thought is windows, my AC unit. But in actuality, it's probably your insulation. Like you're losing a lot of the air that's coming into your house through your walls. And I think being able to sell, to your point, we sell comfort, right? We don't sell insulation because at the end of the day, nobody really cares how the sausage is made. They just want the sausage, right? I just want to be comfortable in my house. I just want my kid to be able to go to sleep and not say, oh, it's 100 degrees in my room, but the rest of the house is well, conditioned. But I think to your point, you do have to find those ways to make it more personal. Again, there's just so much noise out there, and how else are you going to stand out? I think there's a bunch of brands that do it really well, and one that I love, my boss actually says it all the time. He's like, think about Apple versus, Android or, PC back in the day. It was, let's look at the technology. There's all these things inside of your phone, all this like memory space and all these like gadgety things. And then Apple's like, hey, look at this camera. Like you have 1,000 songs in your pocket. It's like at the end of the day, I don't care what technology is there to give me 1,000 because that doesn't resonate with me. I don't understand that. But I do understand being able to walk around with 1,000 songs in my pocket. That's cool because that's what I care about. Right.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a great segue because, one of the things I wanted to hear your thoughts on was around brands that are doing this well, like brands that are seamlessly connecting their marketing strategy with their customer experience strategy. One that immediately comes to mind for me is Disney. I think they're probably like the most, I don't know, they're the most prominent, preeminent brand that's doing this well, right? They've got marketing messages that are like speak to people, like emotionally connect with and engage with those folks. And it goes all the way through the experience from, you see an ad on Instagram or on, Hulu or whatever, promoting the Disney parks or, the Disney experience. And then when you go online to purchase, and then you get your Magic Band, and then you get there and you're at the resort and people know your name and they, all of those things, like every single moment is like considered and thought about and designed. And it starts from what people see in the marketing messages, right? It starts from not just like I showed up at the resort and now I'm having a great experience. It's like they have a great experience in the process of being marketed to and buying their pass, right? So what are some, I'm curious to hear other thoughts from you.
I think that's a good point. I think, there's a couple things that kind of stand out. One, if you think about the fitness arena, right? That's one of the most personal things that somebody chooses to do, right? Especially group fitness, because a lot of people are afraid or anxious, especially if they're getting into fitness, to work out in front of people or with people, right? There's so many objections. So you have to build marketing that's so inviting, that's so personal to somebody to get them to even show up to the parking lot. And we say, most of the battle is people will show up and then they'll drive away. Like they won't even come in the door. So now how do you make that experience from as soon as they walk in? We had this at the last company that I worked with, is as soon as you walked in, it's such a personal experience. From everyone there already knows your name. You have a locker that's personalized to you. It's got your name on it. When you walk in, somebody's going to welcome you. They're going to walk you through what you're going to do today. They're going to show you around. They're going to ask you what your goals are. And they want you to go a little bit deeper. Hey, I'm here to lose weight. Okay, cool. But like, why? Like, what do you want to do? Right? Is it to extend your life? Hang out more with your kids? Is it to be more, whatever that is? Let's get to the why of it. And then let's do touch points, during your initial phase of coming into this. So it even goes past the sale, right? And it's the same with Disney. Once you're there, it's not like once you get into the park, the experience is over.
Yep.
Because then people wouldn't come back and people wouldn't tell their friends and people wouldn't like come again and again. And I think that if you just think of brand, and when you talk about branding and the experience that somebody gets from the brand, think of like an airline like Spirit, right? Their planes probably aren't any worse than an American Airlines or a Delta. Like the plane technology is probably the same, but it's the experience that people have that gives an airline like Spirit a bad rep. I was walking through the airport a couple of weeks ago and it was a hub of Spirit, and just listening to them talk over the intercom versus what I'm used to in Charlotte, American, I'm like, oh my gosh, like the experience of before I even get on the flight, like I don't want to get on it. Like I remember it stuck out to me so much that with the lady was talking and she was like, anyone above the age of 2 needs to be holding their own boarding pass. And I was like, I don't even think my 9-year-old could hold her iPad long enough to get on this airplane. I'm not giving her a boarding pass. So it's little things, to your point, where I can't just sit and rely on the marketing to get in the door. And it's something that as a marketer, I'm sure working cross departmentally with sales and with operations, it's like, hey, it can't end with me. Like, because as soon as I get them in the door or I get the phone to ring, like you've got to keep that experience going.
Yep.
You've got to, provide a good service, be on time, show up, do the little things. But then you also afterwards have to have the customer experience, especially in the home service area, call them afterwards. Hey, how did it go?
Yep.
Right? Because that's how you're going to build a brand. That's how you're going to build referral business, which in our industry, referral word of mouth is the lowest level of marketing dollars that we have to spend on any tactic.
Yep.
So anytime you can build that brand, and Disney does it. I bet Disney could stop marketing today and they would still have their parks full. It's the same with Starbucks. I don't even know the last time I saw a Starbucks ad. I don't think they advertise on TV. Right? Like when do you see it?
Yeah. I think nailed it 100%. So yeah, I think like one of the things a lot of marketing executives over index on is advertising, right? There's still like this kind of classic approach to like, oh, let's just get them in the door and the product will sell itself. And, reality is that doesn't work anymore. There's so much noise. There's so many people in the world just trying to like market and sell their stuff. And so you've got to be able to differentiate yourself by having a better customer experience. I like to talk a lot about customer lifetime value too. Like there's the classic wisdom of, it's easier to sell a repeat customer than it is to get a new customer, right? And if you can get a customer in and they become loyal to your brand, they become loyal to your business and they love your product and service, it's a whole lot easier to sell more things to that person, right? Increase the value of that customer over their lifetime versus just trying to continually get more and more new customers. And especially, you mentioned referrals. I think that's something that is often missed as well. Like word of mouth and referral marketing, people kind of look at it as like, It's not the like sexy, form of marketing, but it's like
Yeah.
one of the most effective things. And one of the best ways to drive that referral business is by your customer having a great experience, loving it so much that they go tell everybody they know about it. And now that person's more likely to go buy from you, buy your
Yeah.
product. So
I
yeah,
think I think you have to have it's so important to have data, right? You have to be tracking much as you can through the marketing and the sales process and afterwards. I mean, I track everything. And to your point, there's always, let's say business isn't going well. There's always going to be a reason. But if I'm not tracking it or I'm not measuring, then I don't know what the reason is. And a lot of people will fall back on, well, I'm just not getting enough leads, or I'm not getting enough foot traffic, or I'm not getting enough people to call. And then you have to go back and say, okay, well, how many are you getting? And then what are you spending? And what are your tactics that you're using to get them there? And now, to your point, lifetime value, are you actually getting enough? And then maybe somewhere down the funnel is where there's a kink, right? Are you getting, in our business, are you getting enough people to call you, but then you show up and you give them an estimate or you talk to them and then they don't close? Or are you getting people to call you and
yep,
then you can't even get out to their house to give them an estimate, right? Because both of those could be problems that we could fix. But if we don't know which problem we're trying to fix, then we can't fix it. And you have to have, and in most businesses, like you said, a repeat customer, a loyal customer is more likely to refer a friend, family, colleague. They're more likely to spend more money with you. And I think the last stat I saw, they stay with you 25% longer. So if you think of like a repeat business, like think of something like pest control, where the traditional lifetime value is, about 4 years, I'm going to stay with my pest control company. Now, if I'm a loyal customer and I can raise that 25%, now whatever marketing tactic you just used and the money you just spent to get that customer, now instead of them being with you for 4 years, they're with you for 6 years, right? And our problem I like to call that like seed planting, right? Referrals, word of mouth marketing. You're really planting a bunch of seeds. And to your point, it's not sexy because it's not instant ROI, right? Where I know that if I put out a Facebook ad and I spend X dollars, I can see the leads coming back in. I can put an ROI on that. But I can't put an ROI on good customer service and, doing my job well. The only real ROI I have are Google reviews and referrals. And if I'm not getting a good number, a percentage of my business coming from referrals, then we're doing something wrong, because that means that my customers aren't loyal. They don't like my service, or else why are they not telling friends, right? And then that's the problem that we should fix.
yep,
But I think, to your point, a lot of people overlook that. And especially when you're in a small business and you're like, hey, I've got a finite amount of money that I need to spend today, and here's the goal I got to get to. It's tough to, as a marketer, to go in and say, but you need to put all these other systems in place that they're going to pay off in 3 months, 6 months. They're going to pay off down the road, but you're not going to see that ROI tomorrow. It's tough to
yep,
pitch that.
yeah, agreed. I think this is a good segue to our next topic, which is kind of tactical tips and tricks for companies who are wanting to improve their marketing customer experience efforts. I think you said something which was around the measurement, and I think that is exactly right. Like people don't measure metrics that help them understand why are customers coming and why are customers staying. I think there's this whole notion around, a lot of people look at customer acquisition, but they don't measure customer retention. They don't, it's like they're focusing on how do I get people in the front door, but they're not thinking about how many people are going out the back door, right? And I think there's a lot of businesses that are just sort of like, it's like a gut, thing. They're just, oh yeah, like we're getting a lot of people in the top of the funnel. It's all working out really nice and fine. But when you look at the other side, you're like, well, okay, yeah, sure, you're driving all this in over here, but what about all the people who are not coming back? Right?
Yeah, I
They
think
left. Yeah.
easy example is, and I used to teach this all the time, is if you have a recurring business, and let's say you have 100 customers, right? I got 100 customers this year, and I paid $100 each for a customer. That was my customer acquisition cost. But I'm gonna lose 30% of those customers because I bad experience, whatever. I'm gonna lose 30%. So that means next year to grow, I need to add 30 more customers just to get back to zero. So now think of your customer acquisition cost, times that by 30, and that's how much I have to spend before I even start growing next year. And I think that one of the biggest ways to continue to grow as a company is, especially in a recurring business, if I can get that retention to be super, super strong, like if I can switch from 70% to 90%, and now I only have to replace 10 customers, think of how much quicker I start growing, right? And how much less money I'm spending replacing customers. And I can go out and get new customers that could potentially be loyal customers and refer friends and family and things like that. It's so often overlooked.
Yeah, agreed. I think that like tactically, some of the things that I feel like businesses should do and marketing leaders should do is like figure out what your baselines are, right? Like step one, if you've never done this before, like benchmark where are you now, right? And you look at web analytics, you can look at like sales data, you can look at like your current kind of ad performance. I would look at, look at your ERP or point of sale and start to understand the recurring customers or return customers. Really evaluate like how well are you doing at closing the back door, right? Like usually I'd say most marketers 2024 pretty good at understanding like, customer acquisition costs. They're pretty good at understanding their funnel. I don't think very many are very good at like understanding like the metrics for retention and engagement and loyalty, right? I think that because to your point, it's often difficult to quantify that, or people assume that it's like, it's a harder number to find. I think it's honestly, people don't do it because they think it's hard, but it's actually, there's a pretty clear way to do it. And it's a matter of calculating out like, okay, like here's a customer, they purchased from me. I'm going to like follow them through. There's, you can use customer data platforms now to be able to kind of track people all the way from like start to, years down the road. How long have they bought from you? Building out, you can do Power BI dashboards, Tableau dashboards to show you these metrics and be able to keep a finger on the pulse of like, how are you doing? How are you doing on your acquisition? How are you doing on your retention and your engagement? So those are some of the tactical things I would say. I also think that a lot of times there's this necessity to blend like qualitative and quantitative data too. So you're looking at like, all right, what are customers actually doing from a purchase behavior standpoint? But also what are they saying? And like sometimes if you lay those things across each other, there's like the thing that they're not saying and they're not doing that's like a missed opportunity, And so if you can
Yeah.
kind of make that like overlay and find the Venn diagram of like, oh, here's a market opportunity, we could sell a new product, new service, we can go after a new demo or new segment. Like those are some of the things that give you new targets for marketing, right?
Totally.
And new targets for customer experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, there's so many different software platforms out there. You can really figure out anything you want to find out as long as you're tracking and you're asking, you really have to ask the right questions, right? We used a platform where they would they would aggregate all Google reviews, right? And then we would essentially have word bubbles to say like, what is most common here? Like, where are we either missing an opportunity or where do we have a chance to leverage what a lot of people are saying that we know is working well, that we know is resonating, and then turn that into marketing campaigns? Because if they're saying it, odds are other people are going to be interested in what they're saying, right? And I have a good example. There's an Instagram e-commerce, clothing company called Legends that I think all they do is Instagram advertising, but they're like a workout type athletic gear. But their customer experience is so tailored to the person. If you think of something like Fabletics that everyone knows, like when you go in, you have to become a VIP member. But by doing that, they know exactly who you are. They know you're a guy, here's your pant size, here's your shirt size, here's the fit that you like. So now every experience I have with that brand, at least digitally, is serving me things that I want to see, serving me things that I would like, putting me in position to buy, not in a position to educate and search, right? Because even though I like to think I'm smarter than them, so I'll still go and kind of search around for myself, but then I'll always come back to, oh, they said I would like this shirt. Of course I would like this shirt. Let me just buy this shirt. right? And now, I got one shirt from this Legends company and it ripped in like a week, and I just shot them a quick note, and they were like, "Oh no, hate to hear that." They sent me another one. Like, no questions asked. No, hey, return it. Let us take a look at it. It was just, we want to give you a good customer experience. And now I'm a raving fan, right? I tell all my friends about it. I like their stuff on Instagram, but to your point, if you don't even have that level of customer service at the back end, where it's so easy to be like, "Hey, sorry, I hate that your shirt ripped. What did you probably did something wrong," right? I'm just gonna send this guy
Yep.
another shirt, right? Because the opportunity of him telling a friend about a good experience and then them buying a shirt cost me $0 to acquire that new customer, right?
Yep. Yep.
But to your point, there's so much software out there. I think, one, you have to have the data, but you have to know how to use the data, and you have to ask the right questions. Like, if I just look at the data, but I don't know what question I'm trying to ask, or, what answer I'm trying to get, then I can make wrong decisions based on the data.
Yep.
I can easily, as a marketer, be like, we need more top funnel, or we need to fix the bottom of the funnel. People are getting through the awareness stage and they're getting to a decision and they're not making it our way. What's wrong there? I think if you don't have like a well-rounded set of data, both qualitative and quantitative, but then being able to ask the right question, you may make a decision that's going to hurt you versus something that would help.
Cool. I love this conversation, man. This was awesome. I want to give people opportunity to connect with you. Where can people find you online?
LinkedIn, Matt Coffey. My first name's William. A lot of people don't know that, but Matt Coffey was taken when I built my LinkedIn in college. But yeah, that's it.
Cool. Awesome. And folks, you can find me at drewburdick.com. Every week I release newsletters on customer experience, talk about topics like this with folks like Matt. We'd love to see you there. Thanks for checking us out. And thanks, Matt, for joining on the podcast.
Yeah, this was great, Drew. Thank you.